What's up, my dudes? My audio diary second channel. Um, Today I wanted to talk about the value that other people will give you. It's kind of interesting when it comes to reality and what reality really is, because to some extent there's like a shared reality we all have, but there's also the concept of perception as reality. Um, and although everybody's mapped into what is reality, um, in terms of like, so objectively, like, this is ranch, okay? However, when I think of this being ranch, I think of the Dominoes I bought like 6 months ago, and I got an extra ranch and I placed it down, right? When somebody else thinks of the ranch, they think of the ranch on my desk, right? They don't have the extra context that puts it there. They just think this is ranch, right? Whereas when I think of it, I have all the other context that adds onto it. So, for example, if you do something for another person may just think of those as things that happen in their lives. So, for example, if you go out to drinks with somebody and you pay for those drinks, they just think, I went out for drinks, right? They may think, oh yeah, they paid for that. It was kind of nice of them, right? But the memory later on, they're going to be like, I went out to drinks with X or Y, right? The shared reality is that you guys went out for drinks. The context would be the reality that is perspective, right? And the further away that you guys get from the original event, the further away that you guys will get away from the potential shared perspective reality. There will only be the actual event itself, and the context around it will be greatly changed by who is perceiving the event, and the consequences of that event, whether they be positive or negative. One of the things that I think is really, really important is when you interact with people, anything you do for them, any risk you take, any sacrifice you make, has to be something that you do almost for yourself. If you do it for another person, um, you're a tree falling in the forest, right? There's almost no telling if the other person is going to be able to value your sacrifice anywhere near as much as you value your own sacrifice. Even if they tell you, and even if you trust them, at the end of the day, you're you, right? And even if somebody would, in that specific context, one day they may grow, they may regress, or you may change to the point where they view you differently, or they view the world differently, or themselves differently, and suddenly what you've done has a different context. So anything you do can only within your own perspective be valued, right? Because no one is going to value your time and your sacrifices like you value yourself. And to some extent, like, there are some people to where you look at them and you're like, I want to make this sacrifice for them. I want to see them maybe succeed, or maybe you want to, maybe you're curious to see what they would do, or you really like them or something like that. But when you do something for someone, you can almost never expect anything back. You always have to anticipate like a loss, unless it's a transactional approach, right? Unless I'm paying you like $5 for this ranch, right? Then the context is that I purchased the ranch from you, right? But that would be a shared reality that joins two perspectives. However, in interpersonal relationships, you never really can join those realities. So anytime you sacrifice anything for anybody, you have to think, can this stand alone? Can I do this for me, or do they have to value it? Because if other people have to value the things you're doing for them, you're gonna fail. They're gonna fall on your face, and one day they're gonna spit in your face, or they're just not gonna value it as much, and they may as well have spit in your face. So it's really important that anything you do, you realize you can do it without them and be okay afterwards. I think a lot of people, when they do perhaps even just regular like good things for other people, or charitable acts or sacrifices or things like that, people are generally looking to get something out of another person, or even just recognition for that. And again, recognition is great. My narcissistic tendencies love recognition. However, um, recognition has to be something painted with a broad brush. It's not a precision instrument, right? Like, somebody cannot recognize you for all the things you want to be recognized for. If they could, you would just, you just clone yourself and recognize yourself and you'd be fine. But you can only do things in hope they recognize them, right? You can only try to make it readily apparent that you want praise for something. You can't make it happen. And when people ignore or miss it, it could greatly hurt you if you open up a vulnerability that you'd want to be seen for it. Now, to another extent, the sacrifices that you make for people, you can decide to be more vulnerable, and you're like, hey, I can regret this. I can take this L. But that would only be based on the consequence of the result rather than the prior action. Generally, whenever I like to do prior actions, my prior actions have to be, regardless of the result, having no regret afterwards. If you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to where the result could completely screw you over, it's probably not worth doing. It's probably something where you should be steeling yourself for the result, whether it be positive or negative. It has to be something where you kind of remove yourself from the situation. Especially because the more things that you do for another person, especially when it gets like deeper into people pleasing, you will just start to build up resentment, right? Because you want this to be seen and this to be seen and this to be seen. You go, why can't they do this? Why can't they see this? Why can't they say this, right? And you're imagining the way you see yourself in your head and the way you want them to see you in your head, and then you build a caricature of the other person interacting with you. And suddenly, every time you do something, you don't actually get mad at the person in front of you. You get mad at the person in your head because you want them to be a certain way, but they can't, because you value whoever you value for whatever reason. So any sacrifice you make for them has to be a sacrifice you make for yourself. It's a sacrifice. It's not a transaction. Transaction is different. Again, like we talked about earlier. But if you're sacrificing something, let it truly be a sacrifice. If it's something you end up regretting, that's a fat fucking L for you, and that's your fault. So don't be an idiot, boys. Take it easy.